On this week's episode, we're joined by Tim Foster. Tim is originally from Flin Flon, Manitoba, but growing up his family moved to many different places, including a brief stop in England, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, and then finally back to Nova Scotia. Tim has been doing graphic design since the age of 19 and has been working in that world ever since. He's now one half of Dose Media, a web design and branding company he founded with a former colleague. Listen in as Tim tells his story.
I was the same old me with the same old blues. I was the same old me with the same old blues. I was the same old me with the same old blues. I was the same.
Okay, we're back for another episode of Brand New View. A special little shout out to my co-host Ben Brammer, who celebrated his 29th birthday the other day.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, big guy.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. It was a big one. Obviously, each year is another one, but one more year and I'm 30.
We are very excited to have Tim Foster join us here tonight. How you doing, Tim?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me, fellas. It's a
No,
pleasure.
thank you. We really
thanks for
appreciate
coming.
it.
Absolutely.
I couldn't believe how many people mentioned have Tim on. Get Tim on. Like, yeah, you gotta have Tim. Tim's on my hockey team. Just for those that I'm on Tim's hockey team.
That's more like it.
Yeah, I'm definitely on Tim's hockey team, and we thought of you instantly. So it was really nice to link up and use that connection in the hockey world to have another guest on.
There you go. Networking.
Networking.
So from what you gave us, it looks like you bounced around a lot growing up, but you're originally from Flin Flon.
Yes, I'm a Flin Flonian.
Flin
Flin Flon, Manitoba, home of
Bobby Clark.
The one and only.
the Hackmeister himself.
Yeah.
They're gonna arrive to the puck first, but just in an ill manner.
There you go. You held on to that for this, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
You did your
Nice
research.
Oh yeah. Bobby
What?
Clark.
How long you were in Flin Flon for? How many years?
We were just there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a funny little mining town that has pretty much dried up. Like they're we're probably more known for the Flin Flon Bombers than anything else now, honestly. But it's like 4 hours north of Winnipeg, so it's basically in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, wow.
I've always heard there's like this like rule of thumb, like if you're walking to school and you see a polar bear, you're allowed to go home for the day. Like no questions asked. It's all good.
Really?
Yeah.
I would have pulled that out once a week. I saw another polar bear, Judy. I don't know. I can't make it to third period.
Only
That
made it to
probably
2,
happens.
so I never had that opportunity to cash that one in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Have you been back since?
No. Closest I came was driving through Winnipeg once, but never went all the way up to the Flon.
Yeah. I've only been to Manitoba once. Brandon, Manitoba, on the border of Saskatchewan, I believe.
I've
Brandon. Yeah.
never been to Manitoba.
There's not many reasons to go to Manitoba.
Oh, I'm in no rush to go
Unless you
back.
want to go see the Jets,
Number
I
one.
guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be really cool to see a Jets game.
Yeah.
Line.
Great crowd.
Oh, their crowd's incredible.
Absolutely. And then you headed over across the pond, the real pond, to England.
Yeah, so I still can't believe my parents did all this moving around, especially with we had a pretty big family as well. So when we left Flin Flon, there was 3 of us. So it was my older brother John, my older sister Jill, and myself. We would have all been under 4 years old, and we jumped in our old Buick and drove all the way to Newfoundland to my dad's parents' place, I guess it was, and unload the Buick. And I think we were all sitting on big foam blocks in the back seat. There was no such thing as safety regulations around baby seats or kid seats or anything like that back then.
The
I love
seats
that.
facing the back window.
I'm just
Yeah,
picturing
exactly.
the Buick more than anything.
Oh man, it was a boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think it was one of 3 Buicks we might have had. But they're the only things you could jam that many people in. So
Yeah.
So we went to England we were there for 3 years. I did, I guess primary there, or kindergarten. My younger sister was born there too, and it was a cool experience. I actually remember a lot of England, even for such a young age. I remember my 4th birthday perfectly, and I remember playing on the street because that's basically your backyard. There's not really any real space in England, and Dad, we didn't really know much about hockey or anything to do with Canada really because we were so young. But I remember Dad actually making hockey sticks out of wood because we couldn't actually go buy them anywhere, and playing in the the driveway that we had, and
That's great.
and the promise was if we ever got back to Canada, we'd play hockey. So that was kind of what started the whole hockey love, anyways.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That is super cool.
I wonder if there's a couple English families over there that are just hockey families because of your family over there, getting the neighborhood kids to play.
Or looking out their window being like, oh, look at these Canadians.
These hooligans.
These guys
Yeah.
doing with those sticks.
Honey,
Yeah.
they've got the broom again.
And then back to Canada, I think it was.
Yep. So we scooted back to Canada. Grade 1 for me. We lived in Wolfville, Nova Scotia, so not far from here. So it was,
You're like an army kid.
yeah. Well, my dad was a Baptist minister. I guess we probably should have mentioned that.
Oh,
Okay, there you go.
Makes
So
sense.
yeah, that was kind of the reason why we moved around a lot. There's a lot of different things that happen with churches. It's either, I don't know, you feel like you need to follow a message or follow God and kind of go to these places that you feel like you're kind of gravitating towards, or it's just the church is ready for a change and that's why you move. I can't really say that I know the reasons why we moved so much, maybe a little bit earlier on. But my parents were still young and they obviously wanted to explore and have some adventure too, and they were crazy enough to drag along a bunch of young kids with them. So
I love
kudos
that.
to that. Like,
Yeah,
it's
kudos
pretty
to
wild.
that. Yeah.
That's a real adventure.
Yeah, so we were in Wolfville for 1 year. Funny story about my dad, actually. Like, he didn't, when we moved into Wolfville, we didn't actually even have any jobs to go to. It was kind of random that my parents moved back. I think my mom was going to Acadia, and my dad sold encyclopedias for the year. So I
Really?
remember him coming home with just like his cords just shredded to pieces, just from getting attacked by dogs, trying to get away from different houses. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
no.
it was
That
wild.
is bad.
But anyways, he got past that pretty quick.
Yeah.
Locked down, I guess, the most permanent job that he had while I was growing up in the house. St. Martin's, New Brunswick. We were there for 7 years.
Right.
Have you guys ever been to St. Martin's?
No, where is that?
It's about 45 minutes from St. John.
Okay.
Right on the coast. It's like an old shipbuilding town, but
Yeah.
it's like this quaint little tourist town. Like, I think there was only 500 people that lived there when we were there.
Wow.
But a beautiful spot. Like one of their claims to fame is they're the only place in the world that you can see 2 covered bridges at once.
Oh, I've been there. Oh, I've been there.
that.
The
Big
longest
caves and
covered.
stuff too.
Yeah, the longest in the
No, no,
world.
no.
Or
That's
is that
not
a different?
the longest.
That's
Actually, that
Heartland.
might be.
Where?
Heartland with covered bridges chips.
That's in.
That's in New Brunswick.
That's in New Brunswick as well.
More on the west side, kind of going
Okay.
north a bit.
So this has the 2. What is it?
The only place in the world that you can see 2 covered bridges at once.
Man, bridges in Atlantic Canada.
Such a strange claim to fame, but
that is a claim
it's
to
also
fame.
the entry to the Fundy Trail. So when we first lived there, there wasn't really much going on with the Fundy Trail, and then they started developing it. I think towards the end, when we were leaving, it was starting to get established a bit more. But like amazing spot to grow up. Like we lived right in the middle of town, right across from the street from the church. But there was like forest on one side, and then there was a field behind our house, and then the beach is right behind the field. So we literally just roamed wherever we wanted. And in the winters, it was amazing. Like we had an outdoor rink and ponds, and there was like a marsh by the beach that always had the best ice. And like we would just basically play hockey anywhere we could find any ice. But yeah, it was a really cool spot to grow up. And looking back now, it definitely has a special place in, I think, everybody in our family. Like it's somewhere that we all love going back to, but probably at the time we might not have appreciated as much as we do now. But
Yeah.
like most
It's always
things
the
when you
case.
go
Yeah.
back.
happens.
Always the case. And I think my math is correct, but 4 of you?
There was a 5th that came along when we were in St. Martin's.
Really?
My
Okay.
youngest brother, Nathaniel.
Okay.
So I'm in the middle child.
You are the
middle.
dead set middle.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2 younger, 2 older.
But you weren't done there. Off to Newfoundland.
Yeah, so leaving St. Martin's was definitely tough. I know it was tough on my parents too, but there was an opportunity in Lewisport, which is kind of in central Newfoundland. If anyone's ever seen, is it Gone From Away? The one about 9/11, all the American passengers get rerouted to Gander.
Right.
So
Yes.
Gander's about 40 minutes from
Yep.
Lewisport, so
Okay.
a lot of the spillover from that actually ended up in like the gymnasiums in Lewisport and stuff too.
I've been to Gander, the only spot in
Oh, really?
Newfoundland,
It's pretty quiet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The whole central is obviously. But yeah, like all my family, both sets of my grandparents were in Newfoundland, so we kind of saw it as a bit of an opportunity to be a little bit closer to them. They were definitely getting older. And even growing up in St. Martin's, obviously it was a little tougher have any opportunity to play any kind of sports. And obviously we were pretty passionate about hockey. We've already touched on that a few times. But my older brother and I, like, we missed 5 years of like hockey growing up because we had a 45-minute drive to St. John for every game or practice. No matter what, that was the minimum drive. So Lewisport was a big draw for us because it was like a 2-minute drive to the rink. So like my brother and I and my older sister, we all played, and it was a cool little hockey town, like really fun place to be for a couple of years. And the plan was kind of to be there for the rest of my high school years, and plans don't always work out the way you expect. So
plans do change, yeah.
Exactly. So my parents actually were shopping around for a farm. Like, that was their kind of like life dream, is to buy some sort of farm somewhere in the Maritimes. So they traveled all over PEI, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and ended up buying this farm in the valley. And then we were in Newfoundland for 2 years, and then things just weren't working out. So they said, well, hell with it. Let's pack her up and ship her off to Nova Scotia. So yeah, that's how we ended up back in Nova Scotia. Again, my parents did this with no jobs on the other end of the move, which is pretty crazy to do. But
Should have your parents on the pod.
Yeah, seriously. Like, these people are giving me fearful and anxious thoughts.
Yeah, exactly.
They've done this twice, 3 times over
Yeah.
with
Wow.
5 kids.
yeah, that's
that's
bizarre part,
incredible.
right?
That is incredible.
So, but honestly, I'd say the move into Newfoundland was probably pretty tough because we were you're starting to establish like your foundational friend group and all that kind of stuff.
Most of
and
you
you're
are
starting
teenagers.
to grow up. Exactly,
Yeah.
right? Like young teens. And then Newfoundland was great. Still have a lot of like really good buddies that I keep in touch with like every week. Still chat with them. But yeah, the Valley was just a totally different place than anywhere else we'd ever been, and that's where I graduated high school. And I would say like the majority of like my kind of core friends are still high school buddies from the Valley, and we've all stayed super close. But if I was going to call anywhere home, it'd probably be the Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Middleton, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went to high school in Middleton. I was actually supposed to go to Bridgetown, but they didn't have a high school hockey team, so I went to Middleton.
Oh,
So
really?
it was just
Did you
like-
play high school hockey?
Yeah, I played in Middleton. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was such a funny scenario, but like, thank God I made that decision because, well, I know a lot of great people from Bridgetown, but I know a lot of my best friends from Middleton.
Right.
So yeah, it all kind of worked out for the best.
Good. No, that's sweet. And then that's it with the tour until high school, right?
Yeah, so graduated
We
from
got
high
there.
school.
We
in
got
Middleton.
there.
Yeah, and then when I went to college, I left again. So
I'm wondering,
Okay.
with all this bouncing around, what did you have time to really find specific interests in school?
honestly,
Sounds like you just played hockey the whole time.
Exactly. Like, honestly,
Did you even go to school?
growing up, I honestly didn't care a whole lot about school. I didn't really have like this like plan or idea of really what I wanted to do after high school. I thought about a few things like kinesiology maybe. When I was really young, I always thought architecture would be a really cool thing, but it's not something that I ever went into high school with like a game plan to get the marks, to get all the credentials I would need to even apply for that. So yeah, I kind of stewed on it early in grade 12, and then my older brother came back from out west, and he was doing the arts communications program in Middleton, and so that's basically like the graphic design program. They just had a different title for it at the time, but my brother and I had like a very similar skill set, I guess you could say. So it kind of piqued my interest a little bit. He was always dabbling in different things, whether it was illustration or photography or video, and we made all kinds of videos and stuff growing up, but it was just for fun. I never really thought about it as any sort of career. And at the same time, I kind of kept it in the back of my mind. My best buddy from Newfoundland, he'd always planned on going to the Culinary Arts Center in Charlottetown at Holland College. So I don't know why, but towards the end of the grade 12 year, I decided to put a little portfolio together and apply for the graphic design program at Holland College. So yeah, I basically left all my high school buddies and went to PEI. I got accepted, so I ended up in Charlottetown for a couple of years.
Wow, and that was straight out of high school.
Yeah. And I was a bit younger too, because I have a weird birthday. It's right before, it's in December, and I started school when I was 4 in England, so I was only 17 when I went to Holland College.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it was kind of
17 in PEI. That's a good time to be alive.
Yeah, it was interesting for sure.
Oh yeah.
Shout out Velvet Underground.
Shout
Oh,
out
yeah.
BU the dirty.
Dirty.
That's amazing.
Yeah, spent
That's
way
come
too
up a
much
couple
time there.
times. Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, I'm curious to hear, with your folks bopping around as much as they did, were they encouraging of you going to school, or did they pressure you in any way, or was that on your own?
I wouldn't say there was any real pressure. Like, there was pressure definitely to apply for something and do something. But there was no, you got to go to university and take this program, or you got to go to this college and do this, or you got to be 2 hours away. Like, they've always been pretty open and always felt that I think we were always fairly mature and prepared when we were in high school. And for us to go away wasn't really a big deal. I know myself, maybe it's just the middle child thing, but even when I was going away in college at 17, like, I might call my parents once a month or something like that, just to kind of check in and let them know that I'm alive. But
I still call my parents every day.
Well, good for you. Yeah. My parents actually text now a little bit, so I do actually chat with them a lot more. So.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Texting,
get a handle on the texting.
Oh yeah. Mom hangs up like 3 times a week. It's hilarious. She's like, I was trying to put you on speaker. I was like, geez. It's not that button. Holland College, are you familiar?
I am, yes. I went to Dow for a while and played soccer for the King's College team. So we had many good battles with the Holland soccer team, right. Holland College, yeah.
Hurricanes. Or were they the Hurricanes?
Yeah. So after the 3 years doing the graphic design,
even that was like a little bit more broken up.
Okay, all right. Let's back up then.
Okay, so graphic design, first year, it was super interesting. It was really intense, like completely different program than what my brother did in the Valley.
You would know, you had all of his notes right there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, had all the tips.
Yeah. Not only the hand-me-down clothes, but the hand-me-down notes.
Yeah, it was a pretty intense program. Like, I think we started off with like 20 students in the class, and I think by the end of the 2 years, so it was a 2-year program, the graphic design. I think there's only 8 of us left that actually graduated.
Wow.
Wow. And we didn't actually touch a computer the first year, which seems bizarre. Like, graphic design, obviously you're moving pixels around, but the first year was purely like conceptual, like really learning like the thought process and really putting in the time. So like, we had a project due every single day, and some of them, like a structural drawing, which was due every Monday, was like a 20-hour project. So I spent a stupid amount of time at school that year. It's such a contrast to like my friends at university just having a great time, and I'm here going to class every day. And
I had 2 first years, so I don't even remember either of them.
Yeah, so I spent every single weekend at school basically. In between other things, I would rollerblade down to the Holland College, check in with the security guard, rip through the whole school, like down the stairs and everything. It was actually awesome that they let me do it. And then spend like 8 hours a day probably just hacking away on structural drawings or whatever that project might be for that week. And my instructor was a super interesting guy too. He was
who was it?
Sandy Crothers. He's
Sandy
I don't know
Crothers.
if you would have met him before, but he did the Men in Black comics before they became a movie and everything.
Really?
And
I definitely know that name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super interesting guy. I don't like our personalities and interests were definitely not in line at all. But I think towards the end of the program, we probably exactly comics, hockey, but he was awesome, very blunt. Like I remember him like whipping artwork out the window if he didn't like it and stuff like that during presentations. He was awesome. And I think I actually left school a little bit early that year. Went back to the Valley, worked that summer. And then I was back for my second year. We moved buildings into the tech center, and then my second year instructor, Nigel Rowe. I think I could probably actually attribute a lot of the, a lot of like design aesthetic and stuff like that I kind of bring to the table. I feel like I probably got a lot of that from him, like a really simple style where you can kind of like dumb things down to what they like their simplest form. And he was always really great at that, and he was an amazing artist too. So I always definitely took some inspiration from him. So it was a great experience. And then I left.
Year 2, you had computers, right?
Yeah, we were on computers.
So Nigel was the one kind of spearheading that and showing you those ropes.
And it was a million times faster to get anything done. So I think I probably spent 20 extra hours at school in the evenings or weekends the whole year compared to the first year.
Wow.
So it was a nice kind of break. compared
But
the first
to your
year.
point, first year kind of taught you that work ethic, right?
Oh,
Where you
totally.
were grinding.
Yeah, and it weeded
And then
everybody out.
eight of you made it. so.
Exactly right. So yeah,
It's
you
to
really figure
40%.
out who's interested in it.
Yeah.
And honestly, even for myself, I remember the first year, I really didn't know that if that was what I wanted to do the rest of my life or anything like that. And I remember it might have been like halfway through the year, I was doing fine. It was okay. Like everything I did was cool, but I wasn't like super stoked on it. I wasn't investing the extra hours into it that I know I could, like maybe that extra 4 or 5 hours into every project could kind of take it to 100%. So I remember kind of just saying to myself, okay, like we're actually creating pieces of artwork almost every one of these projects. So if it's not something I want to hang on my wall after, then I'm just not going to do it. So I started putting a lot of extra time in that year. I think I started having a bit more of appreciation for it. And then in the second year, you start kind of like developing those skills a little bit more and figuring out how you can kind of take your thought process on screen to something that actually makes sense.
And you're doing this all at the ages of 18 and 19.
Yeah,
Like, you're
I
supposed to be
guess.
figuring it out, right? We're
Yeah.
still in high school in some cases.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of crazy. And then I left school, I think a month or two early to go find work in Halifax. And I lived with my brother. He was in the North End at the time. He was doing graphic design. He was freelancing, and I think he was working half-time somewhere else as well. So he helped me kind of make a few connections, but in the end, I ended up landing at this small like family print shop in Burnside for a whole year, and they were awesome. They gave me a chance to get my foot in the door and learn some stuff, but obviously not the dream job or anything like that you think about when you're in design school. But it taught me a ton. Like it taught me how to deal with the worst kind of clients in the world, the worst kind of files in the world, making sure you figure out a way to make them actually print properly and all that kind of stuff. And I learned a lot that year. And then towards the end of the year, I just wasn't really feeling it that much anymore. I kind of wanted to just go make some money and then kind of figure out what's next, whether that was a new job or whatever it might be, maybe something new. So I actually went out west and worked in the oil field for the summer. My older sister was working in Red Deer at the time, so Buddy and I, actually 4 of us drove to Edmonton, I think we did it in it was 2 days straight. Like we didn't stop, we didn't sleep or anything. We broke down for 8 hours in like Marathon, Ontario, which is I think the same place Terry Fox finished his run. Like it was just the most random thing in the world. And we were like ready to sell the Jeep that we were driving and like jump on a bus or a plane to go the rest of the way, but ended up getting fixed and finishing the drive.
Wow.
But I was out there for a week and realized that it wasn't what I wanted to do. But we stuck it out for the summer, but I was there for a week, and then I applied to go back to Holland College and do interactive multimedia, which was like a senior program that you're supposed to have a few years experience before you're really supposed to apply. But I got a bursary, and they brought me back, and it was the best decision I ever could have made, honestly. That year, interactive multimedia kind of just like opened the doors up for graphic design for me. So what you learn in the graphic design program, like the core one is more traditional design, print, branding, all that kind of stuff. But interactive multimedia was a bit of photography, a bit of video, a bit of coding, a lot of web design. And like all those things together kind of just opened up this whole new world for me. Because I was never really interested in just kind of doing one thing. I always wanted to like build that brand and then turn it into a website, turn it into something that people can interact with. And it just, there's so many different little components that comes with design that I wanted to kind of have a feeling for every one of those. I guess just kind of build up that toolkit a little bit more. And that year, I was working on a few different projects. I remember being like, wow, this is definitely something I could do for the rest of my life. And it's definitely fulfilling. And I felt like it opened a lot of creative doors when you weren't just stuck to a few different kind of mediums. Like the digital space is kind of endless, and it's obviously evolving every day now still. So
That is amazing. I had no idea any of that. I kind of thought when you first left Holland College that was it. So did you end up getting a degree with that first 2 years?
They're diplomas. So
Sorry.
graphic design diploma,
Yeah.
interactive multimedia diploma.
And that the interactive multimedia is just a 1 year.
Just a 1 year program. It was awesome, and it was actually the last year they ever did that program.
Oh, really?
Which is kind of crazy.
Shit. I was like, I want to do this thing.
Yeah, I was like, this is the most engaged I've seen in America. I just looked over at you and you're like, yeah.
Yeah,
Just in
it was
dreamland.
awesome. And one thing I should say about Holland College, anyways, and the programs at that time, they were really well suited for me in the way that I learn. Like I'm a doer. I'm not a study books for hours and write an exam learner. I would much rather actually physically go through these things and actually put pen to paper or push pixels or whatever that might be. And that's how I really learned. And I remember we had one test. It was like this pop test in the interactive multimedia thing, and it was on like building databases. It's like the last thing in the world that I was interested in. So I remember like trying to write answers down and being like, no, I'm not even gonna try. This is pointless. I have absolutely no idea, and that's the one thing I'm not interested in at all in this class is databases.
You just left it playing.
Exactly. And I just went and talked to my instructor after. I was like, sorry, Patrick. It's just,
So this was a third guy, Patrick.
Yeah, Patrick Ledwell, who I believe after that he did some freelance work, but he actually became a comedian.
Really?
Yeah.
And was he funny? Shout
Uh,
out Patrick, because this isn't gonna end well for you.
So he's an English major. So most of his jokes were at like a level that most normal people just couldn't even understand.
Yeah.
But he would be like busting a gut and just laughing his ass off in front of the class and having a great time. And amazing dude, helped me a ton that year. And he ended up doing this, I think it's still running in Charlottetown, but this show actually about PEI, basically just making fun of like all the quirks and funny things.
Oh,
in PEI.
yeah.
I've said about it
Going.
It's a live show
it
that they
called?
take. There's maybe 10 or 12 characters that just kind of go around and mock people, essentially. Not like mock, but like it's more like a jokey.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious.
Like it's it's mocky, I guess. Like,
so it's pretty incredible.
it's
That's
really
where he
funny.
ended up going.
Okay.
So I guess after you finished with the multimedia diploma, did you have a general idea of what you wanted to do? I know you mentioned earlier that you had an idea of building a brand and developing your own idea for a company. Did you want to jump in right away or get some experience?
I definitely want to get some experience. So that year when I was doing the interactive program, basically the college would try to pull in real clients from time to time anyways. So I remember like one time we had musicians come in. So every time I would just try to pick the people that I thought had the most potential. So Tim Chason was actually one of the guys that came in.
Really?
So I did like...
I'm loving all of these connections with PEI,
yeah,
by the way.
Hilarious. Yeah, you would. So yeah, Tim came in. I shot a video for him and did some like album artwork. Actually, it was a DVD cover for him. Cool. And then obviously Tim is blowing up. A super talented guy. And then I remember later on that year, I can't remember her last name. Renee Laprise and Brian Sharp. They ran the animation studio in Charlottetown at the time, but they had basically like a side company called Mugisha. So Mugisha was like, they did like animated series and educational stuff for kids. So I remember they brought a project into the college, and I was like, okay, that one looks the hardest by far. I'm grabbing that one. And I remember rebranding them and presenting their website to them in front of a pretty big crowd, and after that they loved the whole thing, and I actually ended up working with them on like a 4-month contract. So I stuck around Charlottetown that summer, which was awesome because I never actually got to spend a summer in Charlottetown, only the winters, which are awful. Yeah, so I stuck around for the summer. I had a job offer that I would have had to wait like a month for it to start or something like that, and I just knew I didn't want to be in PEI long term. So I packed up my rusty Civic and drove to Halifax and started looking for work. I didn't really have any job prospects or anything like that, but I think I was here for a few weeks anyways, and I ended up pulling in like a 1-year contract with a tech company over in Burnside. And that position I had with this tech company over in Burnside was an interesting one. I was kind of like meant to be there doing kind of print design, like traditional design. Not really what I wanted to do, but it was the first thing that popped up. So I jumped on it. I think I was actually filling a mat lead position. But honestly, it just wasn't that busy there. So I started doing some extra stuff there, like a little bit of video and a little bit of animation and a little bit of web work. And eventually the company kind of evolved a little bit. And then next thing I knew, I'm designing like this transport truck that was going to carry 2 of our body scanners on it and design all the videos that were going to play on it. And then I started traveling throughout the States with them and videotaping this kind of like traveling roadshow that they were doing. So I kind of got to do like the full gamut of everything I was interested in, like the branding, the print design, the video design, the animation, like the actual videography. So it actually ended up evolving into something pretty interesting, and I always knew that it wasn't going to be long term for me anyways. Like I always wanted to jump into the agency world because it always seemed a lot more interesting to me, and I always had this kind of goal in the back of my head that by the time I reached 25 I wanted to kind of jump out on my own. But I think until you have like a well-rounded experience, it's really tough to do that, to really know the industry and kind of know a variety of clientele that you might have to deal with, and their perspectives and stuff too, because the agency world is completely different than working internally with a marketing department or working with an animation company or whatever that might be. So that position kind of grew and more, and then our marketing department had kind of shifted to Long Beach, California, and I had an opportunity to move there, but it just didn't really make sense for me financially or anything at the time, and honestly the boss there, her and I butted heads a little too much. So it became increasingly frustrating to work there, and I never really felt like I was delivering to like a standard that I at least held for myself. And I was always kind of keeping an eye out for agency jobs, and I was doing a little bit of freelance for a few different agencies, and that started kind of opening doors to potential opportunities and conversations, because I don't know, Nova Scotia, especially Halifax, it's a small town. It really, what it comes down to is who you know most of the time, rather than actual like job listings or anything like that. It really comes down to so-and-so knows so-and-so is looking for this type of person. So that's what it came down to. I had an interview with an agency, Chester and Company, and didn't hear anything from them for about a month. And I remember the job was just kind of coming to a head, and I remember a few times like driving over the bridge on my way home and calling my brother, just like incredibly frustrated, and then just driving all the way to the valley to basically just so I'd have someone to vent to. And he was always great for that. And he knew where I was coming from. He was actively working as a graphic designer. He was actively running his own freelance business at the time, and so was his wife. So he was always really encouraging to kind of like just choose my own path, go for it, make some kind of crazy decisions. And same with my parents. If they knew I wasn't happy, like they've taken those leaps of faith before without jobs and like
Nothing
moving
new to
across the
them.
country
Yeah.
with 4 kids, 5 kids, whatever it might have been at the time. So yeah, I took a bit of a risk, and I quit my job without another job to go to on like a Wednesday, I think it was, and basically took the rest of my vacation, got rid of the 2 weeks that you're kind of supposed to put in, and just got the hell out of there because it just didn't really make sense for me anymore. So miraculously I got a call like the next day from Chester saying, can you come in Friday morning for a coffee? Met up with them, got the job that I wanted.
Did you let them know that you'd quit the other one?
I can't remember if I did or not.
Well, that's just
That's
so
an
funny.
interesting question though, because who knows?
Yeah, so what are you doing currently for work? Well, you'll never believe it, actually. I
Yeah,
quit
so-
24 hours ago.
Yeah.
Preemptively, like, for this job, or...
Yeah, it was kind of wild, and basically like walked into a job that I was really stoked about, and it was like where I wanted to be, and it was the type of place I wanted to kind of learn and craft my skills a bit more, and just get more experience basically before I jumped out on my own, because the agency world again is completely different than the internal marketing world and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was an awesome experience at Chester. I was there for 2 years, and I helped kind of develop their like interactive department at that time. All the agencies around were basically trying to like stew up this like web team or these digital guys. Like, it was still kind of really new to the industry, and everybody was kind of ramping up and trying to figure out exactly what that actually means, and trying to figure out where the fit is for their clients and all that kind of stuff. So I helped develop like our process for how we would like proof things interactively and all those kind of things. And eventually the team grew to, I think it was 5 people when I left, and yeah, it was awesome. like the people there were wicked. I had an absolute blast there, and that's where I actually met Matt, my business partner. But yeah, it was a wicked experience. And then an opportunity came along, basically where my own freelance work. This whole time I was doing a ton of freelance work in the evenings and doing a lot of moonlighting and building websites and doing video work and logo work. Honestly, like anything I could get, basically, just to kind of build my portfolio up.
So not much free time.
No, it was busy for sure.
When did you play hockey?
I didn't play a whole lot back then, honestly. It was just kind of like this weird gap in my life in between stuff that...
How long were you with Jester again? Just
2 years.
2. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I kind of went in these like 2-year sprints for a while. Where I was just
thought you said 5 for whatever reason. I was like, how did you fit that in? But yeah, 2 makes more sense.
Yeah, so I kind of like managed to gain like little chunks of experience along the way, and eventually I felt like I was ready to kind of go out on my own. Like the freelance business was doing well enough that I felt like I could support it. At least like my core bills, basically had that foundation set, and then I actually found like a half-time position with another agency that was looking for help doing exactly what I did. So mostly like web design, a little bit of flashy animation, a little bit of coding at the time, a bit of branding and stuff like that. So that basically gave me the opportunity to kind of like take that leap for once. I think it was a 3-month contract. We extended it into 6 months, and then by the time the 6 months were over, I had enough work on my own, and I was ready to kind of go out on my own full time. And it's funny how things kind of come full circle. That job that I would have had in PEI if I never left, it was for Screenscapes, so like a local tech company in PEI.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so I ended up doing a ton of work for those guys that year. Mark Hemphill, awesome guy, and built an amazing product. So it's just kind of funny how it goes. So yeah, over the next, I guess it was like 6 years, I ran Timber Creative. So Timber was just kind of like a nickname that I got in high school, and then I know teachers would call me that and clients would call me that. So I was like, okay, I'll just
really. They'd call you Timber?
Yeah, it's just easy.
Yeah. As if Tim is hard.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty long.
Yeah.
I ran Timber Creative full time for 6 years, but during that time, I would take on like half-time gigs and stuff like that, doing like art direction or lead designer or something like that with a few different tech startups, which was awesome. Like getting into the tech world here, the startup world. Halifax is obviously all over that right now, and it's a super interesting place to be.
Do you find it's an encouraging environment to work in with those types of people?
I don't know. I'm kind of two minds when it comes to tech startups. Like,
love it.
Get into the dirt.
Yeah. He also did work for my tech startup, so that's why I want to hear.
Well, here we go.
You guys are doing good. No, but when it comes to building a company, like at the foundation, I think you should be able to support yourself with no funding. Like, when did it become cool to build a business that doesn't make money, and your only goal is to eventually sell that company? Like that, for some reason, that just doesn't make any sense to me. I know why people do it, and I know why it's kind of booming right now. Like, it's definitely, there's so much media and stuff and hype around it and everything else, and everybody sees the 1% that has that huge sale, and they feel like they won the lottery after cashing in 3 or 4 or 5 years of like crazy hard work. But it's pretty rare.
Oh yeah, there's like 97 or 98% of startups fail.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you've got to be part of like 2% or.
Yeah.
Or you're not gonna
And
make
it's interesting too. Like, a few of the tech startups I worked with folded, and a few of them have found ways to survive and just become a normal company that just makes money every day. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
Like, you don't need to sell. You can obviously build a great company that can support a lot of people and contribute back to the economy. So
They just look at it's like flipping houses. They're just flipping companies, which is a shame because there's no passion behind that, and that's not what we're about over here.
Well, we hear it so often, and not to pick apart what I'm currently doing, but we hear it so often in our line of work that this is a stepping stone, kind of, right? It's not permanent. Whereas to me, to your point, right, Tim, it's kind of like there's nothing wrong with making money and having it be permanent. You don't have to sell.
No.
Why can't you just make money each day? I always question that. Like, did we do this the right way? I'm sure every startup has that question asked a million times over. Have we done this the right way or the correct way? Jury's out on that one, I think. It's a really tough answer.
It is. And I honestly, I think even for myself, kind of going through the process of working with different tech startups and seeing different environments and different cultures, does it really actually help your culture?
Yeah.
If it doesn't feel permanent, if
Right.
you're not actually bringing in some revenue. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty tough to expect people to stick around long term,
Right?
if the company doesn't feel like it's actually going to be around long term either. So
Yeah. It's a culture of
Such a great
uncertainty.
point. This is really, really hitting home.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's kind of terrifying, but nobody really talks about it either. Like there's so much.
It should be talked about.
Oh,
You just made it make so much sense.
what was it? Like there's all like the Gary V's and everything in the world that every single startup founder is just drooling over and like lapping up every single thing that he drops, right? But I can't remember. Somebody said it on Twitter once, and they were just like, "Why is everybody just gobbling up all this hustle porn?" And I was like, "No, you're right. It's incredible. Like
Yeah.
people just gobble this stuff up, even if it's the exact same thing that's repeated over and over and over again. And for some reason, it drives people to just work crazy amounts of hours on ideas that sometimes probably aren't really that realistic. They're probably not going to pan out. You might be better off actually working on it as a side hustle, see if
Yeah.
it actually starts
That's
pulling
what
in some
happens.
revenue, and then build it into a company instead of
not
just
agree
jumping
more.
out and expecting it to turn into something beautiful." So
Hustle board. That's a great.
Hustle porn is great.
yeah, I wish I could give credit to whoever said that, but I thought it was dead on.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
is
that's
bang
perfect.
on. And back to what you were saying, Mark. That's not the attitude we want to have on this side, right? Like, we want to stick passionate to it, and I think that's kind of where you ended up. I mean, you've always been passionate toward graphic design, it seems, but now where are you with it all?
So, I guess, it was 4 years ago now. I was doing a little bit of freelance work with Revolve, which is one of the bigger agencies here in the region, and love their crew, love what was going on. They worked with a lot of great brands. So I actually took a half-time position with them. So I was working half-time with them, working on all their basically just digital projects. So any website or app or anything that came through the door, I was working on the interface design, and still running Timber Creative on the side. And then eventually ended up getting promoted to the digital director. So I was basically directing all the digital projects that came in into the agency, and basically just kind of managing the developers and all the projects and stuff like that. And honestly, it just started to get a little crazy. I was only actually in their office for the mornings. But we had awesome people there out of like every agency I've ever worked with. I thought it had like the best internal culture, and the way they worked with clients, even the clients that came in were always great. So it kind of came to a head where it's like I either need to go 100% in on this or 100% in on my own business. It didn't make sense for me anymore to go into their office 4 hours in the morning and then basically spend the entire afternoon on Slack still communicating with the same team just to make sure everything's running smoothly. I kind of always had like one foot in that door and one foot in the other door, and it just kind of came to a head. So it's kind of crazy how it all worked out, but at the exact same time I was kind of going through this like internal decision that was fairly big because I'll get to this in a second, but at the same time, Matt, who I mentioned earlier, that we worked together at Chester, like we were really good buddies. He was an incredibly talented designer, and I always said if I'm going to start a company, Matt would be one of the few people I'd ever consider starting a company with. And right when this was going on, I hadn't even talked to him for probably at least a year. He kind of messaged me out of the blue, like, dude, I got this client. I think it's like what I need to kind of jump out on my own, take that leap. And it's like, we should probably grab a coffee or something. So,
Gonna need to grab that coffee.
oh, jeez. Yeah, so we grabbed a coffee, and I think within 5 minutes, we're like, yeah, let's start a company. Let's do it.
Heck yes, that's hilarious.
That's awesome. So you started what became Dose Media.
Yeah, exactly. So I remember going home to my wife, Lindsay, and being like, this is kind of crazy, but like we just finished building the house 2 months before, too. I was like, I think Matt and I might start a new company. and probably gonna leave Revolve. And she's just like, okay, yeah, I believe in you guys. You could definitely kill it. So we're like, so we started like getting the wheels in motion, and
That went over a lot better than you expected, or
I don't know. She's pretty easy going.
it's pretty easy going?
Yeah.
That's so sweet.
So yeah, it was kind of crazy. We spent the next 2 months kind of preparing to launch Dose like January 1st, just kind of make it a clean cut. We still, for the next year, still end up doing actually a ton of work with Revolve, like collaborating with them. So that was awesome. Definitely made it a lot easier for us to step out and have them as a nice, reliable client. And it was awesome to be able to go down to the agency probably once a week and see everybody and continue to collaborate with them. And we still do the odd project with them now. So yeah, it was pretty awesome. Things definitely worked out. We let go of, I think, both of our retainers after year one, and decided to just kind of completely go on our own, get rid of those foundations, because retainers are really nice safety blanket, but sometimes they can also be quite a strain too, because when you're on a retainer, there's obviously expectations around availability and stuff like that. So if somebody reaches out and they need something, you're probably going to turn around and put them in the top of the priority list, right? So you're constantly just kind of doing reactive work and reactive design and stuff like that, and not maybe going through the full process that Dose would go through with one of our clients that we, I don't know, acquired, I guess. So
That's amazing. So what style do you operate under now?
what style?
Like as opposed to a retainer? I'm
Okay. So
curious,
project to project. I
Okay,
guess
so
would be
it's
the
just
best way to say it.
you take one on at a time, and until that's done, you won't take another.
No, we probably work on anywhere from 12 to 24 projects at a time.
Really?
And that's just because some projects are bigger than others, right? So some projects will span over 2 weeks, some will span over 2 months, some will span over like 8 months, depending on the size. So we Dose Media specializes in branding and web design. So
30-second commercial and
there
go.
we go. So it actually works out amazing because Matt and I have completely different styles. Our backgrounds are a little bit different, but we have like this kind of overlap in the middle. So Matt's like an incredible artist. I'd say a little bit more like edgy, kind of street inspired, but he's like a branding wizard and incredible like packaging design guy, traditional media, and I'm branding, and then the digital side, so like user experience, user interface design, and mine's a little bit more kind of clean cut maybe. So when we kind of combine those two styles, it definitely works out really well. So when it comes to project time, just say it's a branding and web design project, you typically start with the branding because that's going to set your foundation for absolutely every decision you're going to make moving forward. So that's not just like look and feel, but it's the way you talk about yourself, it's the way you interact with customers, all that kind of stuff. So typically we would establish that foundation over the first couple months, and then we'd start building all the interface design, the user experience, the strategy, and then actually developing the website after that.
Very cool.
That's amazing.
Awesome. And Dose Media, because you do want to stay somewhat small, it's still just the two of you?
Yeah, so that was kind of our initial plan. Like we thought there was an opportunity to do something that was a little bit different, stay a little bit smaller. So Dose, we picked the name because we just kind of wanted to do something that was like a little bit edgier, it was short, but then we also could post-rationalize that by saying we can be that like small injection that kind of goes into an agency and kind of gives them something a little bit different that they might not have internally. And I wouldn't say we're overly threatening because we're only two guys. But yeah, it's kind of worked out. We love it. It's been a blast.
What do you mean, kinda? You're here.
That's true.
Yeah, you're on Brand New
This is
View.
the
A very solid brand.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So what type of brands do you generally work with? Do you have a particular area of business, or are you kind of all over the place?
Honestly, we have clients like across the board. Like it's the full spectrum. We definitely love working with like alcohol companies, beer companies, cannabis, outdoor companies, basically anybody that wants to do something a little bit different. But like I think we've managed to do something a little bit different in every industry that we've worked into. Like a good example might even be like Bowers Construction. They're one of the home builders that are growing and then definitely up and coming in the city. They came to us to do a video for them last year, and we turned around and said, I don't think it's really a video that you need. It's your branding probably needs to be tightened up before you think about anything, because again, that's your foundation for everything you're going to do. So we ended up just actually starting the brand right from scratch, and came up with like a really interesting illustration style that we could redo all their houses in and stuff like that. And it's been something that's like been very ownable in the market, and we've already seen competitors trying to mimic it. So
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I worked for a media company last year doing research on construction companies in particular, and some of the actual websites that they're still using are nowhere to rely from the 90s, like GeoCities.
oh wow.
And I'm like, wow, the opportunity here I was calling to write an article about them. I was like, I should be calling if they want to be rebranded. They need a new website. What am I doing here? But it's interesting that there is lots of opportunity there, even if you think there isn't.
I think I built my first website ever on GeoCities.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I ripped off NHL.com and built a Canucks website.
Really?
Nice.
Yeah, I wish it still existed. It'd be amazing.
Are you a diehard Canucks?
Yeah, I've been a Canucks fan like since I was a kid. I can't even remember.
A couple
long
tough
now?
Game 7s.
I'm a
Oh,
Sens
man.
fan. Can't remember why.
Oh, dude.
I
Tough
can't
year.
remember why either.
I know exactly why.
Devils fan. Weird, but
Devils
wear it
fan.
proud.
Devils is a good one. I actually like that one because you
They're
you had a really good 90s
Yeah.
and early 2000s. Like, you won a lot of cups, Doug.
I won a Looney from my dad when they beat the Stars.
Didn't they win 3?
They won 3. They won 3. I wasn't a fan when they won the first one, though.
Oh, okay.
I
was gonna
but
say, yeah.
Yeah, it was
they
like
won 3 since
95.
you
I
were
would have
alive.
been 6. But I became a fan because I wrote a letter to Broder.
Broder.
And his team wrote back.
Nice.
Fan for life.
I've won. And this kind of goes back. You can tie this in with your Holland College days, Timber, Chester, Dose, whatever you'd like. But what has been the biggest challenge you've had to overcome personally in relation to your professional?
It's hard to say. I don't know if there's like one thing that I would pick. I feel like the way that we grew up and the way my parents raised me to like, and raised all of us really to take a little bit of a risk. Maybe we weren't ever actually programmed to work for somebody else. So I always felt like once I kind of learned the industry, why does it make sense for me to do this for somebody else? I should be doing it for myself, and
Right.
and basically designing my life to fit how I want it to be, right? So like there's 5 kids in our family and we're all entrepreneurs. Like, how does that make any sense? So,
We're going to need their contact information before you leave.
yeah. So
Whole
we
fam.
all are in some capacity. Like
Keep it in the family.
my brother ran a design studio. Or a small freelance practice. He did a civil service thing for a while. He owns 2 gyms in the valley right now and does all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
My little brother, he actually works for my older brother, but he also does barbering and stuff on the side, which was like something he started on his own. My little sister she's an amazing musician, can play any instrument in the world, teaches violin lessons, tunes pianos. She's a doula, and my older sister's a hairdresser. So we all kind of end
Wow.
up going these separate ways, but all kind of doing our own thing where we're all kind of our own bosses too.
Are we just going to have a foster family episode?
Get the whole crew.
Can you guys
Couple
adopt
more
me,
mics,
maybe, or something? I don't know.
I love that your career kind of mirrors your childhood, and that I found. I mean, when you quit your job, I believe it was right before Chester. Was that the Long Beach one?
Yeah.
The one that you didn't go to Long Beach, but yeah. So you did it. Same idea. Didn't have a job to fall back on. I imagine those thoughts of your parents doing the same thing may have crossed your mind during that thought process as well.
Yeah, and I think I actually remember talking to my mother before. I don't know if I talked to her before or after I quit the job, but I remember her saying, like, you know what? If you're not happy, move on. Like, we've done it before. We've taken huge risks, and it will work out in the end. Like, we're all willing to work hard. We'll find a way. Like worst case, I'll sell encyclopedias.
Right?
Yeah.
But it does give you that comfort to know that you can do it as well, right? If your folks are able to just quit on the spot and kind of start up a new life in Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, PEI, wherever, what's to suggest that you can't do it as well? I mean, they're there to tell the story, so of course that gives you some satisfaction in knowing that you're able to do just that. Yeah. That's really impressive. Did you just simply know you didn't want to do those things, or you always had a longing for other things?
Honestly, I think there's a lot of different factors that go into it. So I knew that I kind of want to run my own ship.
So that was always in the back of your mind too.
Yeah, so this is the back of my mind. I saw my brother do it. I learned from him. I learned a ton from my brother over the years, whether that was like growing up in the same bedroom and sketching together, or sitting in the back pew in church sketching together, or like learning a bit of photography from him, or making videos together, or whatever, when he was in school, or whatever that might be. So he definitely, I would say, helped give me the courage to probably take that leap and know that it's definitely very doable. But at the same time, I've always wanted to design my life to fit for my lifestyle and kind of do what I want. So, like, people think it's crazy when they, I don't know, look at my Instagram or something like that and see that I've been to a few different places, and they're always like, oh man, it must be amazing to just, like, I don't know, go to Moab and mountain bike for a week. It's like, yeah, it is, but I work my ass off so I could do that, and I actually work when I'm there too. Like, I remember last time we were there, a client called on like a Wednesday saying they had 48 hours, we need to pump out like 100 digital banners for them or something like that by Friday. And I'm more suited for that job than Matt is, so I got up at 5 a.m, 2 days in a row, and got it done before everybody else got it for breakfast. But if you don't make those, there's kind of like a give and take for sure. There's sacrifices, but luckily what I do is almost 100% remote, so you can do it from anywhere.
And they're sacrifices for your job, your brand, that means something to you.
Exactly.
So it's a lot easier. It comes a lot more naturally. I mean, I found that. I can't make sacrifices for someone else's business. Sorry.
Yeah, you're not going to be as passionate about it no matter what, right? And people always say, like, how do you get up and actually work in the morning? I don't know how I could actually work from home. It's like, if you don't work from home, if you don't actually get anything done, you're not going to pay the bills. So it's a lot of motivation behind it, no matter what.
I always work 10 times harder at home.
Yeah.
Because mine's a little bit different, but in that same sense, it's like, well, if I don't do this, I won't have a home. It's like, I need to, you know what I mean? Like, I like really barrel down at home. It's the kind of the guilty conscience playing a factor, but at the same time, I just, why would you abuse that? So do you always work from home? Do you guys have a home base?
We both have great home offices. So for now, that's what we're doing. We're always like stewing on ideas for building out ridiculous treehouse offices and stuff like that. But realistically,
make us an office too.
There's no concrete plan to do anything.
Right.
Honestly, we're pretty fortunate in our industry that I think people have gotten used to the idea that there's just people that work from home. Like we present sometimes right in my living room. We'll set up a photo studio right in my basement. Like, there's a lot of things we can do at home. There's no reason for us to have a boardroom table.
Right. There's no reason for you to pay rent twice.
No, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Plus, you actually lose a lot of tax benefits too. So.
Yeah, that's something we wouldn't have thought of or know.
There you go.
This place,
no.
This place we just pay rent here that we just set up.
Even working from home too, like, it gives us a lot of extra flexibility. So Matt has 2 kids, so his schedule fluctuates like crazy. So it doesn't really make sense for us to be in the office 9 to 5. And the same for me. Like, Matt might be answering emails at 5 or 6 in the morning, and then he might be offline for the morning, and then he might be working all evening. And I might keep a more structured schedule of like 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 or whatever that might be. But at the same time, it's easy for me to dodge it with my mountain bike when it's beautiful in the morning and get a ride in, and then maybe I work in the evening when it's raining instead. Like, just having that flexibility and being able to work from home, like, we're super, super fortunate that we can do it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, you need to be a hard worker no matter what to get it done. So
I think that's been one of the most repetitive messages, not to suggest that anything's been too repetitive, but even in your first year at Holland College, even in trying to figure it out with Tim, like it just seems like you were always able to put in those hours and work hard. And as you mentioned, there's a reason you're able to go to Mojave or wherever you said you were going to mountain bike for a week. You fucking worked your nuts off for it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's you put in the work, and honestly, even with Dose now, like Matt and I have been in the industry a long time. Like I've been working since I was 19
you're very
years
established.
old, right?
Like
So,
you're in there.
there's a lot of experience, obviously, and there's a lot of long hours and late nights and all that kind of stuff that accumulates and gets us to where we are today.
So do you still pull all-nighters for the odd job?
Thankfully, we usually don't have to. We've been pretty fortunate the way things have worked out. If things are scheduled properly and the process is in place and everybody's in sync, then there's no reason to be doing that,
right?
No matter what, no matter where you work.
That's awesome.
That's true.
That's a good message as well. Did you have anything else you wanted to ask?
Sounds like good management to me.
Yeah, it sounds like excellent management. You and Matt have it figured out. You two obviously work well together.
Yeah, and honestly, we don't even work in the same space every day either. Like,
that's
true.
We usually try
a lot of trust though too.
Yeah, and I guess that comes from having a bit of a personal relationship and working together in the past, and both knowing that we work hard and you don't really need to worry about the other guy slacking off. Sometimes I'd say the workload's a little heavier on each of us, depending on the type of work that comes in. But at the end of the day, we get it done, and we have the flexibility we want to live the lives the way we want. So keep going.
Awesome.
Sounds like an entrepreneur to me.
Sounds like you got it figured out. Good stuff.
No,
That's
good.
awesome.
So onward and upward. We'll see where we are in a couple of years.
Onward and
Very
upward.
cool. All right, I think that's. I think we're probably good for this week. Wrap things
excellent.
up.
Another excellent episode.
Yeah, thanks again, Tim. Really appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, telling your story. I obviously knew you playing with you for the last couple of years, but I can honestly say that I feel like I know you that much more with your story, and I think you're that much cooler, Tim.
Oh, jeez. That's all that counts.
Isn't that sweet?
Thanks, Betty.
Wish
He's
you
a
just
beauty.
passed me the puck.
Oh, dude, I set you up all the time.
I know.
Wow.
He does.
You almost made
Tim,
it through.
no, Tim is sneaky good in almost every situation.
Okay. I gotta get out there. We gotta get on the pond. Let's
Great
hit a
center.
pond up soon.
We do. Gotta get a game going.
Good.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
You're good in both ends. Chippy as fuck. Like, work your nuts off. Great shot, which is deceiving for most goalies, I find. You catch a couple. On your off wing, mostly.
Love that.
It's the best way to shoot.
And great in terms of knowing the game and passing. That's
I love how we brought it back to hockey.
we have
again.
2 or 3 really good centers, though, honestly, if you look at it. Our team is stacked.
All
we
right.
should win
Stop
this year.
talking about hockey so I can finish this.
Stroking off the Rockets here. Here we go, boys. Let's fucking go, Jeremy.
Come on, baby. All right.
Player coach. Bobby Clark.
Oh, we didn't talk about Bobby enough, I feel like, but what can you do? All right, Tim, thanks again for a brand new view. I'm Mark Boudreau.
And I'm Ben Brammer.
See you next week.
with the same old blues, with the same old blues, with the same old blues. I was the same old